The Avengers vs. the Peter Factor by midnightwolf2192. Chapter 29, Field Trip Lead Up. Peter might not have returned to school the next day, but Pepper and May sure did. It had been decided at the meeting the night before that Pepper and May would approach the school with the information regarding the bullying. Peter made his mother and aunt promise that they wouldn't revoke the class's trip privileges, but Pepper countered by saying only if Peter gave her the full name of the boy who had pushed him down the stairs. Marcus Walters had no idea that the storm out was coming his way. Pepper had enough information to have the boy expelled from school, no matter what Peter wanted. Peter understood that, but it didn't mean he had to like it. On the drive over, May and Pepper discussed their options. We could get him transferred to different classes, Pepper posted, but May shook her head. Short of having Peter moved up to the next grade, he has at least one of them in every class, May replied, and Pepper frowned. And I won't have him moved up a grade without discussing things with him. Understandable, Pepper said with a nod. So, moving out is out of the question. We need to address Flash Thompson's bullying with Principal Marita as well as the recent physical bullying. Hopefully the man will be reasonable. When Happy arrived at the school, he led May and Pepper down the halls into the main office. The receptionist looked up at them and gaped when she noticed Pepper. Miss Alton, we have an appointment with Principal Marita at 9:30, May said kindly to the stunned woman. The receptionist nodded before rushing into the office behind her. May and Pepper stepped back and waited. They only had to wait a few minutes before Miss Alton returned with Principal Marita on her tail. Mrs. Parker, Miss Potts, please come through, Principal Marita said. The two women and Happy followed him into his office, and Marita indicated to the seats. I must say, Miss Potts, when I read your email this morning, I was confused. Is Peter all right? No, he isn't, Jim, May replied, and Pepper pulled out a file out of her briefcase. She handed the file to Principal Marita with a frown, and the man raised an eyebrow. As he read through the document, the man's face went paler and paler. Did this happen on school grounds? Marita asked breathlessly. What the heck was happening to his best student? Yes, and the injuries were inflicted by other students, Pepper replied firmly. Marita stared at her, and Pepper nodded. Peter has only given us one name, but I hope you understand that I want this dealt with to the nth degree. Of course, Marita replied. He didn't care who the student was. This was assault. The Parkers were well within their rights to demand the teenager revolt to be arrested. Who was it? I will call them and their parents here straight away. Marcus Walters, May said, and Marita winced. He had expected the name to be Eugene Thompson, but then again he had never had Eugene in front of him for violence towards another student. This would be Marcus's third strike. I am well aware of him, Marita replied, and Pepper raised an eyebrow. Let me call his parents. This was his third strike. That we know of, anyway. Pepper and May remained silent as Marita pulled up the boy's details on his computer and dialed a number. The phone call was short as Marita requested the Walters attend the school ASAP. May, I am so sorry this has happened, Marita said after hanging up the phone. Some of the anger left Pepper. She had expected an all-out fight to get her concerns addressed. But the man actually looked sorry for what had happened. We, as a school, have let Peter down. We should have kept a closer eye on things. You can't police the behaviour of every student, Jim, no matter how hard you try, May replied comfortingly. This technically happened outside of school hours, despite being on school property. Peter never even told us he was being picked on. Still, we should have recognised the signs, Marita said. Principal Marita, Peter may be a terrible liar most of the time, but he is good at masking his emotions, Pepper chimed in, and May nodded. I will admit, I came here ready to fight, but I can see you're as affected of this as we are. Please call me Jim, Miss Potts. Peter is one of the best students here, Jim said, and both May and Pepper smiled. He frequently volunteers to help the younger students with work, and despite a few tardies or absences, which we now can explain to the internship, he is the most consistent student here. Of all the kids, he is the most likely to have received a Stark internship despite his age. Jim, I was prepared to cancel the tour of Stark Industries in light of this bullying. Pepper admitted, and Jim nodded. He'd expected as much. But I won't, because Peter asked me not to. He also asked that we don't do anything about the bullies until after the tour. He didn't want them to lose the opportunity to tour Stark Industries. I am going to assume by the plural bullies, Peter has told you about more instances of bullying by other students? Jim said, and both Pepper and May nodded. I will respect Peter's wishes, simply because he is a better kid than most. However, I warned him that I will not let bullying go again, not the physical kind. I do warn you that I will be returning to see you after the tour has been completed, and we will then address the other bullies, Pepper said, her tone firm and businesslike. Jim nodded in understanding as Pepper gathered up the photos and information about Peter's injuries. About 10 minutes passed before Mr. and Mrs. Walters entered the office. Miss Alton led them into the office, and they stared in confusion at Pepper Potts stood to greet them. Mr. and Mrs. Walters, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances, Pepper said after shaking their hands. The couple sat down in the chairs Miss Alton had brought in and stared at Principal Marita. Daniel, Tracy, I wish we weren't having this meeting, Jim said, and everyone watched as Tracy's face fell. Pepper handed over the folder, and Jim sighed. Marcus has been involved in yet another altercation with a student. What has he done now? Daniel Walters asked, and Pepper was surprised to note the man sounded resigned. He has physically harmed another student, to the point he is out of school until next week, Jim said before handing the folder over. Tracy and Daniel pulled the documents from the folder, and Tracy gasped loudly. As this is his third strike, I'm afraid he will need to be expelled from Midtown School of Science and Technology, and this infraction will be marked on his permanent record. We understand. Daniel's resigned tone had May and Pepper sharing a look. The men looked over at the two women while his wife cried softly into her hands. We also understand you are well within your rights to press charges against our son for what he has done to your son. We won't be pressing charges, May said after looking at Pepper. Pepper nodded, and May moved from her seat to beside Tracy. She took the crying woman's hands in hers and squeezed them gently. Peter doesn't want that. I will ask instead he be placed straight into counselling. May chimed in, and the Walters nodded. Pepper handed Mr. Walters a piece of paper with a list of names on it. These are some of the top therapists specialising in teenage mental health and anger management. The only condition we have for not filing charges against Marcus is that he begins to see a therapist weekly to deal with his issues. My fiancé and I are prepared to assist in these sessions should you find yourself struggling. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy whispered as May wiped the woman's tears away. We will never be able to fully articulate how sorry we are for our son's behaviour, Daniel said, standing and shaking Pepper's hand. The woman smiled comfortingly at the man before nodding at Marita. They had said their piece, and now they weren't needed anymore. May and Pepper said their farewells to the conflicted parents and the principal before walking out to the car with Happy leading the way. I was expecting more of a fight, Pepper admitted as she and May climbed into the car. I expect the fight will come, May said tiredly. Just wait until we have to bring up what the Thompson boys done. That's when the fight will come. We might need to send the assassin squad to Carroll when we address that wasp's nest. The rest of the drive back to the tower was silent as the two women processed what had happened. When they arrived, Pepper and May jumped into the elevator and rode it up to the Avengers common floor. When they arrived, both women let out an excited squeal at what they saw. Peter was sitting on the lounge wrapped tightly in Nebula's arms. Bucky was beside them, his metal arm wrapped around both Nebula and Peter, with Peter's head resting on his shoulder. Natasha was sitting on the floor at their feet, her head resting against Peter's legs. The other Avengers were scattered around the room, watching the Aristocats, all wrapped tightly in blankets.